The corridor lights flickered as Ji-woo walked through the restricted section of Orbital Station Taeyang 7. She shouldn't be here. Her research clearance gave her access to most of the station, but this area was different. Warning symbols covered the walls in dozens of alien languages. Some she could read. Others she could only guess at their meaning. She was supposed to meet her supervisor in the main biodome, but Ji-woo had taken a wrong turn. At least, that's what she would tell anyone who asked. The truth was more complicated. For 3 days now, she'd heard sounds coming from this section. Sounds that made her heart ache. Ji-woo stopped at a heavy metal door. The sounds were louder here. Soft chirping, almost like crying. She pressed her ear against the cold surface and listened. Whatever was inside was young. She knew that much from her years studying alien species. Young and scared and alone. Step away from that door, human. Ji-woo jumped and turned around. A massive figure stood behind her. Commander Tal Vex of the Vorath Empire. His scales were deep green, almost black, and his eyes glowed orange in the dim light. He was nearly 3 meters tall, and his clawed hands could crush her skull without effort. "I'm sorry," Ji-woo said, keeping her voice calm. "I got lost. I was looking for Biodome 3. You were not lost." Tal Vex moved closer, each step deliberate and heavy. "You have been seen near this door before." Ji-woo's throat went dry. She'd been careful, or so she thought. "I heard sounds. I'm a xenobiologist. It's my job to be curious about alien life. What is behind this door is none of your concern." Tal Vex's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "The younglings inside are sacred to my people. They are being prepared for a holy purpose. Contact with outsiders would contaminate their purity." Younglings? Ji-woo couldn't help herself. Their children? Why are they alone? Why do they sound so distressed? Why? Tal Vex's eyes narrowed. "You know nothing of Vorath traditions. These cubs will become temple guardians. They must be raised in isolation to forge their spirits. They must know only discipline and duty. Any warmth, any kindness, would make them weak." Ji-woo felt anger rising in her chest. She'd studied dozens of species, and she knew what isolation did to young minds. It didn't make them strong. It broke them. "That's cruel. That is our way." Tal Vex leaned down until his face was level with hers. His breath smelled like sulfur. "Approach this door again, and you will be executed. Touch those younglings, and your death will be slow. Do you understand?" "Human." Ji-woo nodded, not trusting her voice. "Good." Tal Vex straightened. "Now leave this section. Do not return." She walked away, feeling his eyes on her back until she turned the corner. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, though Tal Vex was terrifying. From anger, from helplessness. Those cubs were suffering, and she could do nothing about it. For the next 2 days, Ji-woo tried to focus on her work. She analyzed soil samples from the planet below. She wrote reports about atmospheric conditions. She attended boring meetings with other researchers, but every night, she lay in her quarters and heard those chirping sounds in her memory. On the 3rd night, she made a decision. Ji-woo waited until the station entered its sleep cycle. Most of the crew would be resting. Security would be lighter. She pulled on her research uniform and grabbed her field kit. Inside were medical supplies, nutrient supplements, and scanning equipment. Everything a xenobiologist might need for a routine examination. She made her way to the restricted section, taking a different route this time. The corridors were empty. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure someone would hear it. The door loomed before her. Ji-woo pulled out her research credentials and held them to the scanner. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the light turned green. Her clearance was higher than she'd thought. Or maybe someone had made a mistake in the security protocols. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Ji-woo stepped inside and the door closed behind her. The room was dark, except for a faint blue glow from heating panels on the floor. The air was hot and dry, the way Voreth preferred it, and the smell, it reminded her of the reptile house at the zoo she'd visited as a child. As her eyes adjusted, Ji-woo saw the enclosure. It was large, but empty. No toys. No enrichment. Just bare walls, and a pile of torn fabric in one corner that might have been bedding. Then she heard movement. 3 shapes emerged from the shadows. They were smaller than Talavex, but still large, each one about the size of a big dog. Their scales were lighter, more gray than black, which meant they were young. Their eyes glowed golden in the darkness. The cubs circled her slowly. Their movements were predatory. Hunting. Ji-woo could see their muscles tense beneath their scales. She could hear the soft clicking sounds they made, communicating with each other. One of them, the largest, bared its fangs. They were already the length of her fingers. Ji-woo knew she should be terrified. These creatures could kill her easily. But all she felt was sadness. They were so young, and already they'd been taught that the world was a threat, that they had to fight or die. She slowly lowered herself to the floor, sitting cross-legged. The cubs stopped moving, confused by this behavior. Prey ran. Enemies attacked. This human did neither. Ji-woo closed her eyes and began to hum. It was a lullaby her grandmother had sung to her when she was small. A simple melody about stars and moonlight and being safe in the darkness. The clicking sound stopped. The room went silent except for her humming. When Ji-woo opened her eyes, all 3 cubs were staring at her. Their heads were tilted to the side, a universal gesture of curiosity. The largest one took a step closer, then another. "It's okay," Ji-woo whispered in Korean. "I won't hurt you." The cubs sniffed the air, scenting her. Then it did something unexpected. It sat down, just like a dog would. The other 2 followed. Ji-woo's heart soared. This was the moment. The connection. The first step toward trust. She reached slowly into her field kit and pulled out a nutrient bar. It was designed for omnivorous species, safe for most alien biology. She broke off a piece and held it out. The smallest cub crept forward. Its eyes never left her face. It sniffed the food, then gently took it from her hand. The others watched as their sibling ate. When nothing bad happened, they came forward too. Ji-woo fed them, speaking softly the whole time. She told them about Earth, about her grandmother, about the stars she'd seen on her journey to this station. She didn't know if they understood her words, but she hoped they understood her tone. Hours passed. The cubs grew bolder. They let her touch their scales, examining them for signs of illness or injury. She found what she'd feared: malnutrition, stress markers, signs of psychological trauma. They were being slowly destroyed by isolation. Eventually, exhaustion caught up with her. Ji-woo meant to stay awake, to leave before morning. But the cubs had curled up around her, their warm bodies heavy against her sides. Their purring, a sound she hadn't known Voreth could make, rumbled through the floor. She closed her eyes, just for a moment. That's when the alarm started screaming. Ji-woo woke to the sound of heavy footsteps and angry voices. The cubs around her tensed. Their purring stopped instantly. She sat up, her body stiff from sleeping on the hard floor, and saw the door sliding open. Commander Talvex entered first, his massive form filling the doorway. Behind him came 2 Voreth guards, both armed with plasma rifles. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. The blue light from the rifles cast sharp shadows across the room. "I warned you," Talvex said, his voice shaking with rage. "I told you what would happen if you came here." The cubs scrambled to their feet. But they didn't run to Talvex. They didn't cower in fear. Instead, they positioned themselves between Ji-woo and the guards. The largest one, the first who had taken food from her hand, stood directly in front of her. Its body was rigid, ready to fight. Talvex stared at the scene, his orange eyes wide with shock. Impossible. They should not defend you. They should tear you apart for trespassing in their sanctuary. Maybe they don't see me as a threat, Jiwoo said quietly. She was scared, but she kept her voice steady. Maybe they see me as a friend. Friends? Talvex spat the word like poison. These are sacred guardians, not pets. You have corrupted them with your human weakness. You have destroyed cycles of tradition with your foolish sentimentality. One of the guards aimed his rifle at Jiwoo. Commander, should I remove the intruder? The middle cub, slightly smaller than the first, let out a low growl. Hold your position, Talvex commanded. He studied the cubs carefully, his tactical mind working through the situation. If we attack the human, they will defend her. They might be injured. The Elder Council would demand answers. So, what do we do? The second guard asked. Before Talvex could respond, another voice echoed through the corridor. You do nothing until I arrive. A human man entered the room. He was older than Jiwoo, perhaps in his 50s, with gray streaks in his black hair. He wore the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, Director Jae-sung Choi, the highest-ranking human on the station. Director, Talvex said, his tone shifting to something more careful. This human violated Vorath's sacred space. By our law, she must face execution. By your law, Jae-sung agreed. But she is also a citizen of Earth, working under diplomatic protection. You cannot simply execute her without a proper trial. A trial? Talvex's scales rippled with anger. She has confessed by her presence. There is nothing to debate. Jae-sung walked closer, his eyes moving between Jiwoo and the cubs. Jiwoo could see him taking in the scene the way the cubs protected her. The gentle way they leaned against her legs. I invoke Diplomatic Protocol 7. Any action taken against a human citizen must be reviewed by the Station Council. All member species must agree on the punishment. Talvex's claws scraped against his weapon harness. Very well. But the cubs must be removed from her influence immediately. They must be cleansed of this contamination. No! The word burst from Jiwoo before she could stop herself. The cubs pressed closer to her, sensing her distress. You can't separate us. Look at them. They're healthy for the first time, since they arrived on this station. Healthy? Talvex laughed, a harsh barking sound. You know nothing. They were being forged into weapons. Now they are ruined. They were dying, Jiwoo said. Her fear was giving way to anger again. I scanned them. They have stress damage to their organs. Their growth is stunted. Another few months of isolation, and they would have permanent psychological damage. You lie. I have the scan data in my field kit. Check it yourself. Talvex gestured to one of the guards. The Vorath carefully approached, keeping his rifle lowered. The cubs watched him, but didn't attack. The guard picked up Jiwoo's kit and brought it to Talvex. The commander pulled out her scanner and reviewed the data. His expression didn't change, but Jiwoo saw his grip tighten on the device. This proves nothing. Young guardians always show stress. It is part of their tempering process. Vading 17. Tempering? Jae-sung's voice was cold. You're torturing children and calling it training. You have no right to judge Vorath traditions, human. A new voice, soft and ancient, drifted into the room. But I do. Everyone turned. An elderly Vorath female stood in the doorway. She was smaller than Talvex. Her scales faded to pale gray with age. But there was authority in her posture, in the way she moved. The guards immediately stood straighter. Scholar Ventara, Talvex said, surprise evident in his tone. I did not know you were on this station. There are many things you do not know, Commander. Ventara walked slowly into the room, her eyes fixed on the cubs. I have been observing this situation since the human first approached this door. I wanted to see what would happen. You allowed this contamination? Talvex looked betrayed. I allowed nature to take its course. Ventara stopped a few meters from Jiwoo and the cubs. Tell me, Commander, how old is the tradition of isolated rearing for temple guardians? Talvex hesitated. It is ancient. As old as the Vorath Empire itself. Incorrect. Ventara's voice was sharp. The practice is 83 cycles old. Less than 3 human generations. It was created by the military caste during the expansion wars to produce soldiers without empathy. It has nothing to do with temple guardians or religious tradition. The room went silent. Ji-Woo could hear her own heartbeat, feel the cubs breathing against her legs. That's not possible, Talvex said, but his voice lacked conviction. I am 400 cycles old, Commander. I remember when cubs were raised in family groups, taught to hunt and fight together. Those warriors were stronger than any produced by isolation. They fought for each other, not just for duty. Ventara gestured at the cubs. Look at them now. They defend this human because she showed them something you denied them. Kindness, connection, pack bond. The Elder Council. The Elder Council sent me here to investigate these cubs' condition. They received reports that the mortality rate for isolated younglings has increased dramatically. They wanted to know why. Ventara's eyes locked on Talvex. Now I know. This human has done in one night what your methods failed to do in months. She kept them alive. Talvex's scales flushed darker, a sign of shame among the Vorath, but his pride wouldn't let him back down completely. Even if what you say is true, she still violated our space. She still broke our rules. Then we will have a trial, Jae-sung said. Let the station council decide. But until then, Dr. Park remains in my custody, not yours. And the cubs? Talvex demanded. Ventara considered the question. The smallest cub had wrapped its tail around Ji-Woo's leg. The other two leaned against her, their golden eyes watching every movement in the room. The cubs stay with her. They have bonded. To separate them now would cause the very damage you claim to want to prevent. This is unacceptable. This is reality, Commander. Ventara turned to leave. The trial will be held in 3 days. Until then, I suggest you prepare your case carefully. The Elder Council is watching. Talvex stood frozen for a moment, fury radiating from every scale. Then he spun and marched out, his guards following quickly behind. When they were gone, Jae-sung let out a long breath. Ji-Woo, what were you thinking? I was thinking they needed help, she said simply. The director looked at the cubs, then back at her. You've started something here. Something big. I hope you're ready for what comes next. I don't care about what comes next, Ji-Woo said. She put her hands on the heads of the 2 nearest cubs. They leaned into her touch. I care about them. Ventara paused at the door. You have a good heart, human. But Commander Talvex is dangerous. He will not accept this humiliation easily. Watch yourself. Watch the younglings. I will, Ji-Woo promised. As the scholar left, the smallest cub climbed into Ji-Woo's lap. It was too large to fit comfortably, but it tried anyway. She wrapped her arms around its warm body and felt it purr again. 3 days until the trial. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to prove that kindness was not weakness, that connection was not corruption. 3 days to change everything. The station council chamber was built to hold representatives from 15 different species. The ceiling stretched high above, designed to accommodate the tallest aliens. The air was carefully regulated to be breathable for everyone, which meant it smelled strange, a mix of chemicals and filters. Ji-Woo sat at a table in the center of the room, feeling very small. The cubs sat beside her, their restraints removed at Ventara's insistence. They hadn't left her side for 3 days, sleeping in her quarters, following her through the station. Already, the crew had started to notice. Some watched with curiosity, others with fear. Director Jae-sung stood behind her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. A gesture of support. Around the circular chamber, Representatives from different worlds watched from their designated platforms. There were insectoid Trell, gaseous Volm contained in environmental suits, the crystalline Luminari who sparkled in the light, and there were 5 Vorath, including Commander Talavex. The chief arbiter, a Luminari named Riva, called the session to order. Her voice rang like bells. We are gathered to determine the fate of Dr. Ji-Woo Park, human xenobiologist. She is accused of violating Vorath sacred space and corrupting Temple Guardian candidates. Commander Talvex, present your evidence. Talavex rose from his platform. Even from across the room, his presence was intimidating. The evidence is clear. Security footage shows Dr. Park entering a restricted area marked with warnings in multiple languages. She knew she was forbidden from entering, yet she chose to ignore our laws. A holographic display activated, showing footage of Ji-Woo approaching the door on different nights. Then, it showed her entering the enclosure. Furthermore, Talvex continued, she spent unsupervised hours with cubs who were meant to remain isolated. She fed them. She touched them. She contaminated them with her presence. The display now showed Ji-Woo sitting with the cubs, feeding them, petting them. The result of her interference is clear. He gestured dramatically at the cubs. These younglings were meant to become fearless guardians. Instead, they have attached themselves to a human. They follow her like domestic animals. She has destroyed cycles of careful preparation with her reckless compassion. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. The Trell representative clicked his mandibles in a sound that might have been agreement. Dr. Park's actions, however well-intentioned, represent a fundamental violation of cultural sovereignty, Talvex concluded. We ask that she be punished, according to Vorath law, execution or permanent exile from all Vorath space. The chamber buzzed with conversation. Ji-Woo felt her stomach drop. Execution. The word felt unreal, like something from a story, not her actual life. Riva's voice rang out again. Director Choi, you may present your defense. Jae-sung stepped forward. Thank you, Arbiter. We do not dispute that Dr. Park entered the enclosure. However, intent matters in any justice system. Dr. Park is a xenobiologist. Her specialty is understanding alien life. When she heard sounds of distress, her training compelled her to investigate. He activated his own display. These are Dr. Park's academic credentials. Top of her class. Published expert on interspecies behavioral communication. She has worked with over 40 different species without incident. Her record is spotless. Her credentials do not give her permission to ignore our laws, Talavex interrupted. No. Jae-sung agreed. But they do establish that she acted from professional concern, not malicious intent. Furthermore, I would like to call Scholar Ventara to provide context about these sacred traditions Dr. Park supposedly violated. Ventara rose slowly from her platform. I have served the Vorath Elder Council for 200 cycles. I have studied our history and traditions extensively. The practice of isolated rearing for temple guardians is not ancient. It began 83 cycles ago, during the expansion wars. It was created by the military caste, not religious leaders. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Talavex's scales darkened. This is irrelevant. It is entirely relevant. Ventara cut him off. You claim Dr. Park violated sacred traditions, but the tradition itself is a recent political invention, designed to produce emotionless soldiers. Ancient Vorath raised their young in family groups, teaching them cooperation and pack bonding. What Dr. Park did was actually closer to our true traditions than your isolation chambers. You cannot prove. I have documentation from the Vorath archives. Ventara transmitted data to the Council's systems. Genetic studies, historical records, cultural analyses, all support my conclusions. Riva studied the data, her crystalline form pulsing with light as she processed information. These findings are significant. However, we must also consider the cubs themselves. They are the ones most affected by this situation. The cubs are evidence of corruption, Talovex insisted. They should demonstrate their training, show their readiness for guardian duties. Instead, they behave like pets. Then let us observe them, Riva suggested. Bring the cubs forward. Jiwoo felt panic rising in her chest. The cubs sensed her fear. The smallest one, which she privately called Biol, pressed against her leg. The largest, Ha, moved to stand in front of her. 3 Vorath handlers entered the chamber, carrying control devices. They approached the cubs cautiously. These younglings are property of the Vorath Empire, one handler announced. They must be secured and removed for examination. The moment the handlers reached for the cubs, everything changed. Hay's growl shook the floor. Dal moved to flank Jiwoo's other side. Biol, despite being the smallest, showed her teeth and hissed. They formed a perfect defensive triangle around Jiwoo, their bodies coordinated without any visible signal. The handlers tried to use their control devices, electronic tools designed to compel obedience through sound frequencies. But the cubs didn't respond. They stayed focused on protecting Jiwoo. Impossible, one handler muttered. They should respond to the control frequency. All Vorath respond. Vorath, respond. Maybe they don't want to respond, Jiwoo said quietly. She stood up, placing her hands on Hay and Dal. Maybe they're choosing for themselves. The cubs relaxed slightly at her touch but didn't break their defensive formation. Riva's light pulsed brighter. Fascinating. They are not mindless or corrupted. They are functioning as a coordinated unit. A pack. This proves nothing except that the human has damaged them, Talovex argued, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. Actually, it proves everything. Ventara descended from her platform and approached the cubs slowly. They watched her, but didn't threaten her. Look at their coordination, their awareness, their decision-making. These cubs are healthier and more functional than any I've seen from the isolation program. She pulled out a medical scanner. With your permission, Dr. Park? Jiwoo nodded. Ventara scanned each cub carefully, while the entire council watched. The data appeared on the main display. 3 days ago, these cubs showed severe stress markers, malnutrition, and signs of psychological trauma, Ventara announced. Today, their stress hormones are normalized. Their nutrition levels are improving. Their neural development patterns show increased complexity and social cognition. Dr. Park did not damage these cubs. She saved them. End quote. End quote. Argen. The chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives argued in a dozen languages. The Trell representative was clicking excitedly. Even some of the Vorath observers seemed shaken. Talovex stood abruptly. This entire proceeding is a mockery. You ignore our sovereignty, our right to raise our own younglings as we see fit. No one disputes your sovereignty, Riva said calmly. But we must also consider the welfare of the cubs. They are living beings, not objects. And they have clearly made their choice. Cubs cannot make choices. They must be trained, shaped. They are making choices, Jiwoo interrupted. She'd stayed quiet until now, but she couldn't anymore. Every time someone approaches with bad intentions, they defend me. But when Ventara approached with kindness, they allowed it. They're not corrupted. They're not damaged. They're just learning to trust. She knelt down between the 3 cubs, wrapping her arms around them. You want to know what I did wrong? I showed them that the world doesn't have to be cruel, that strength and kindness can exist together. If that's a crime, then I'm guilty. The cubs pressed against her, purring loud enough for everyone to hear. Riva conferred with the other council members for what felt like hours. Finally, she spoke. We have reached a decision. Dr. Jiwoo Park's actions, while technically violations of Vorath regulations, were motivated by professional concern and genuine compassion. Furthermore, the outcome has been objectively positive for the cubs' health and development. However, she continued, we recognize the Vorath Empire's concerns about cultural sovereignty. Therefore, we offer this compromise. Dr. Park is officially pardoned of all charges, but because the cubs have bonded with her, they can no longer fulfill their intended role. Dr. Park must become their legal guardian. What? Jiwoo and Talvek said simultaneously. The cubs must be cared for until they reach maturity. Since they have bonded with Dr. Park, separating them would cause psychological harm. She will be responsible for their welfare, education, and development. The Vorath Elder Council may send observers if they wish. Ventara smiled, a frightening expression on a Vorath face. The Elder Council agrees to these terms. Talvex looked like he might explode. This is unacceptable. This is final, Riva said firmly. The council has spoken. As the session ended, Jiwoo sat, surrounded by 3 purring cubs, and wondered what she'd just gotten herself into. She'd expected punishment. Maybe exile. Instead, she'd become a mother to 3 alien children. And somewhere in the station, she knew Talvex was already planning his revenge. 3 months had passed since the trial. Jiwoo stood on the observation deck of Research Outpost Gamma, watching the sunrise over the alien moon's red landscape. The view never got old. Twin suns painting the rocks in shades of crimson and gold. Heavy footsteps approached behind her. She didn't turn around. She knew those footsteps. Morning, Hey, she said in Korean. The largest cub, now almost the size of a small car, rumbled a greeting. He pressed his head against her shoulder, nearly knocking her over. Jiwoo laughed and scratched behind his ear ridges. He leaned into the touch, purring. Are your siblings awake yet? Hey chirped, which she'd learned meant yes. Sure enough, Dal and Biol appeared in the doorway moments later. They'd all grown so much. Their gray scales were darkening, showing hints of the black they'd have as adults. Their golden eyes were sharper, more alert. Breakfast time, Jiwoo announced. Then we have work to do. I need to check the soil samples in Sector 7. The cubs followed her to the small kitchen. She'd learned to prepare their food exactly how they liked it. Raw meat, with certain minerals mixed in. They ate with enthusiasm, making satisfied sounds. Living at the research outpost had been good for all of them. Away from the crowded station, the cubs could run and hunt and play. Jiwoo had taught them commands in Korean, English, and even some Vorath words. They'd learned quickly, proving they were highly intelligent. But they'd taught her things too. How to read Vorath body language. How to move quietly through difficult terrain. How to think like a predator. After breakfast, they headed outside. The outpost was small, just living quarters, a lab, and storage. Everything else was the wild moon, full of strange plants and dangerous animals. Perfect for research. Perfect for training. Biol. Scout ahead, Jiwoo commanded. Dal. Left flank. Hey. With me. The cubs moved into position without hesitation. They'd done this dozens of times now. Working as a team came naturally to them. Jiwoo walked through the red rocks with Hay beside her, his eyes scanning for threats. She collected samples, noting the strange fungi growing near a water source. The cubs explored, but always stayed within sight. It was peaceful. Quiet. Too quiet. Jiwoo's communicator should have beeped by now. The station sent daily check-in signals. She tapped the device. Nothing. Not even static. That's weird, she muttered. Hay growled softly. His scales had flattened against his body, a sign of alertness. Biol and Dal returned, both tense. What is it? Jiwoo asked, though she couldn't understand their response chirps yet, but she trusted their instincts. Back to the outpost. Now, they moved quickly, the cubs forming a protective box around her. As they approached the outpost, Jiwoo saw the door was open. She always kept it closed because of the sandstorms. "Stay close," she whispered. The inside of the outpost was dark. Someone had cut the power. Jiwoo's heart raced. She grabbed her emergency kit from a hidden compartment, pulling out a small flashlight and a stun weapon. A voice echoed through the darkness. "Dr. Park, how kind of you to return." Jiwoo recognized that voice. Krezar. A light turned on, revealing 6 Vorath warriors in the center of the room. They wore black armor and carried plasma weapons. The one in front, slightly smaller than the others but with scars across his scales, smiled. "My brother sends his regards," Krezar said. "Talavex cannot rest while you live. You humiliated him, destroyed his reputation. For that, you must die. The council pardoned me. If you kill me, you'll start an interstellar incident. Only if anyone discovers what happened. Tragic accidents occur on remote outposts. Equipment failures. Magnetic storms. Who will know the truth?" Krezar gestured at his warriors. "We waited until the magnetic storm began. Your communications are blocked. No one can hear you scream." The cubs moved closer to Jiwoo. Their bodies pressed against her legs. They were growling now, low and dangerous. Krezar noticed them for the first time. "Ah, yes. The corrupted younglings. We'll dispose of them too. Perhaps the Elder Council will thank us for ending this embarrassment." "They're not younglings anymore," Jiwoo said quietly. "They're pathetic. Look at them, defending a human. They should be..." Hay struck like lightning. One moment he was beside Jiwoo. The next he was across the room, his jaws locked around a warrior's arm. The Vorath screamed, dropping his plasma rifle. The room exploded into chaos. Dal disappeared into the ventilation shafts, a tactic Jiwoo had never taught her but that she'd figured out on her own. Biol circled the warriors, making them turn to track her, dividing their attention. Krezar fired his plasma weapon. The shot went wide, scorching the wall. "Kill them! Kill them all!" Jiwoo dove behind a storage container as plasma bolts filled the air. Her mind raced. 6 trained warriors against her and 3 cubs who were still technically juveniles. The odds were terrible, but the cubs weren't fighting like juveniles. They were fighting like a pack. Ha used his size and strength, bowling over warriors, disrupting their formation. Every time someone tried to aim at Jiwoo, he forced them to focus on him instead. Dal struck from above, dropping through ceiling panels, using her claws on exposed necks and joints in armor. She was fast, precise, and utterly silent. Biol was the distraction, always moving, always making noise, drawing fire away from her siblings and Jiwoo. Jiwoo wasn't defenseless either. She'd studied Vorath biology for years. She knew their weak points. When one warrior got too close, she used her stun weapon on the nerve cluster at the base of his skull. He dropped like a stone. "They're just children," Krezar roared. "How are they doing this?" "They learned from the best," Jiwoo shouted back. She'd also learned a few things. She triggered the emergency lighting system, and the room flooded with bright white light. Vorath eyes, adapted for dim conditions, needed a moment to adjust. That moment was all the cubs needed. Hay took down 2 more warriors. Dal disabled a third by shredding his weapon. Biol, despite being the smallest, fought with fierce determination, her teeth finding every gap in armor. Soon only Krezar remained standing. His warriors were unconscious or too injured to fight. The cubs circled him, blood on their scales, their eyes glowing with predatory focus. "Wait," Jiwoo commanded in Korean. Krestring. The cubs stopped but didn't retreat. They watched Krezar like he was prey, waiting to be finished. Jiwoo stepped forward, her stun weapon pointed at Krezar's chest. "You came here to kill me, to murder me in secret. But I'm going to do something different." She pulled out her communicator. The magnetic storm had passed. She activated the recording function. "State your name and purpose." Krezar's eyes widened. No. You can't. State your name, Hay growled. It wasn't quite language, but the intent was clear. Krezar, brother of Talavex, he said finally. We came to eliminate Dr. Park and the corrupted cubs. On whose orders? My brother's. The council's judgment was false. She deserved death. Jiwoo stopped the recording. Now you're going to leave. You're going to take your warriors and go. And you're going to know that I could have killed you, but I chose mercy. Mercy. Krezar spat. You think this is mercy? Yes. Because when the Elder Council sees this recording, they'll know the truth. They'll know Talvex sent assassins. And they'll know I let you live, despite having every reason to end you. She stepped closer. This is your only chance. Take it. Krezar looked at the cubs, at his defeated warriors, at Jiwoo standing calm and certain. He saw his death in their eyes and chose life instead. We're leaving, he muttered. The warriors limped out, supporting each other. Krezar was the last to go. At the door, he turned back. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Jiwoo said. It's over because I'm tired of your brother's games. And next time, we won't show mercy. When they were gone, Jiwoo's legs gave out. She sat on the floor, shaking. The cubs immediately surrounded her, pressing close, purring to comfort her. We did it, she whispered. We survived. Baal licked her face. Dal rested his head in her lap. Hay lay down, forming a wall between her and the door. But as Jiwoo sat there, holding her unlikely family, she noticed Dal's side. Blood stained his scales. A plasma burn. Shallow, but painful. Oh no. Dal, let me see. The cub whimpered as she examined the wound. It wasn't life-threatening, but it needed treatment. Her hands shook as she pulled out medical supplies. It's okay, she told him, though she wasn't sure if she was comforting him or herself. You're going to be okay. As she worked, cleaning and bandaging the wound, Jiwoo heard a sound that made her blood run cold. An engine. Approaching fast. Through the window, she saw a ship landing. Not a hunter's vessel. This one bore the symbol of the Vorath Elder Council. The cubs tensed, ready to fight again. But Jiwoo recognized the figure that emerged from the ship. Scholar Ventara had arrived. Ventara entered the outpost slowly, her ancient eyes taking in the scene, the scorch marks on the walls, the blood on the floor, the injured cub in Jiwoo's lap. Behind her came two medical technicians carrying equipment. The Elder Council detected a disturbance, Ventara said. We were attacked, Jiwoo replied, her hands still gentle on Dal's wound. 6 warriors, sent by Talvex through his brother. We know. Krezar's ship was intercepted when it left the moon. His warriors are in custody. He confessed everything. Ventara approached slowly, making sure the cubs could see her. The Elder Council is displeased. With me? With Talvex? With the isolation program? With 40 cycles of lies and traditions built on cruelty? The scholar knelt beside Dal. May I? Jiwoo nodded. Ventara examined the wound with practiced skill. She spoke to her technicians in rapid Voreth, and they brought forward a medical device Jiwoo had never seen before. This will heal the burn in minutes, Ventara explained. It will hurt at first, but then the pain will fade. Dal whimpered as the device activated, but he stayed still. Bile and Hay pressed against him, offering comfort. Within minutes, the burn sealed, leaving only a faint scar. Thank you, Jiwoo said. It is I who should thank you. Ventara stood, her old joints creaking. What you have done here is remarkable. 6 trained warriors, veterans of combat, defeated by 3 cubs and 1 human scientist. We fought as a pack, Jiwoo said simply. They protected me. I protected them. Exactly. Ventara activated a holographic display. Images filled the air the cubs as they'd been 3 months ago, malnourished and traumatized. Then images from today, healthy and coordinated and fierce. The Elder Council has been watching, recording, learning. Learning what? That we were wrong. That isolation does not create strong warriors. It creates broken ones. Ventara changed the display, showing statistics. Mortality rates for isolated cubs, 42%. Success rates for those who survive, 31%. Compared to ancient records of pack-raised cubs, 6% mortality, 89% success rate. Jiwoo stared at the numbers. You're saying almost half the cubs die? Yes. And those who survive often develop psychological problems that make them unstable, unreliable. We created the isolation program to forge perfect warriors. Instead, we created damaged souls. Ventara looked at the 3 cubs, but these 3, raised with kindness and pack bonds, are healthier and stronger than any isolated cub in recent memory. So what happens now? The Elder Council has made a decision. The isolation program is ended. Immediately. All cubs currently in isolation will be placed in family groups. And you, Dr. Park, will be asked to help train the handlers. Jiwoo's eyes widened. Me? Train 4th handlers? You understand pack dynamics better than most of our own people. You have proven that human compassion, combined with Vorath strength, creates something greater than either alone. Ventara smiled. You will be paid well, of course, and you may continue your research. But we need your knowledge. What about Talvex? Talvex has been stripped of his rank and exiled from Vorath space. His brother faces trial for attempted murder. Their faction has lost all political power. Ventara's expression hardened. They will never threaten you again. Jiwoo felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It was over. Really. Over. But Ventara wasn't finished. There is more. Your recording, the footage of the attack, has been distributed throughout Vorath space. People are watching. They see 3 cubs defending their human packmate. They see compassion and loyalty and strength working together. It is revolutionary. Revolutionary? For 83 cycles, we have told ourselves that emotion is weakness. That isolation makes us strong, but you and these cubs proved that connection makes us stronger. Ventara gestured at the holographic display, which now showed crowds of Vorath watching the footage. Public opinion is shifting. People are questioning other traditions, other lies we've been told. Jiwoo looked at the cubs, Biol, Dal, and Hei. They'd grown so much. Not just in size, but in confidence, in skill, in their bond with each other and with her. I didn't set out to change anything. I just wanted to help them. That is precisely why you succeeded. You acted from compassion, not politics. Ventara pulled out a small device. The Elder Council wishes to offer you something, a formal position as Ambassador of Interspecies Relations. You would travel to different worlds, share your knowledge, help build bridges between species. But the cubs would go with you, of course. They are your pack, your family. That bond is sacred. Jiwoo looked down at the 3 cubs. Biol had fallen asleep in her lap, exhausted from the battle. Dal and Hei were watching her with their golden eyes, waiting for her decision. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course. Take your time. Ventara prepared to leave. The Elder Council is patient. They have waited 3 generations to fix their mistakes. They can wait a few more days for your answer. After the scholar left, Jiwoo sat with the cubs in the quiet outpost. The twin suns were setting, painting everything in orange and purple light. What do you think? She asked them in Korean. Should we become ambassadors? Travel to strange worlds? Meet new species? Hei rumbled thoughtfully. Dal chirped, which usually meant he was excited about something. Biol just purred and pressed closer. I'll take that as a yes. Jiwoo laughed. She spent the night thinking about her grandmother, who'd taught her to be kind even when the world was cruel, about the sounds she'd heard that first night, the lonely chirping that had broken her heart, about the choice she'd made to open that door, knowing it might cost her everything. It had cost her everything, her old life, her safety, her certainty about the future. But it had given her something more valuable: a family, a purpose, a chance to change the galaxy, one connection at a time. 3 days later, Jiwoo stood in the Elder Council chamber via holographic link. Hundreds of Vorath elders watched as she gave her answer. I accept the position, she said. On one condition. I won't just share knowledge about Vorath cubs. I'll work with any species that asks. Help any younglings that need it. Build bridges wherever I can. The eldest of the council, a female so old her scales were nearly white, nodded slowly. Agreed. You will be Earth's first ambassador to the Vorath Empire, and through us, to the galaxy. Your work begins immediately. 1 year later, Jiwoo stood in a massive diplomatic summit on a neutral station. Representatives from 40 species had gathered to discuss a trade dispute that threatened to become a war. She walked through the crowds with Biol, Dal, and Hay at her sides. They were fully grown now, magnificent creatures with midnight black scales and eyes that glowed like suns. People stopped to watch them pass. Not with fear, but with curiosity and respect. A small figure approached nervously. A child from the Kirel species, reptilian like the Vorath but smaller, with blue scales instead of black. The child's people and humans had been on the brink of war for months over territorial disputes. Excuse me, the child said in halting English. Are you Ambassador Park? I am. Jiwoo knelt down to the child's level. What's your name? Rix. I saw the videos. About you and the cubs. The child looked at Hay, who was watching with calm intelligence. Is it true that friendship can work between different species? Even species that are supposed to be enemies? Jiwoo smiled. She thought about that first night, sitting in the darkness, while 3 scared cubs decided whether to trust her. She thought about every moment since the trial. The attacks, the journey from fear to family. It's not just friendship, she said gently. It's family. And family doesn't care about species or politics or old grudges. Family means you protect each other, no matter what. Biol approached the child carefully and lowered her head. Rix reached out with trembling fingers and touched the smooth scales. Biol purred, a sound that made the child smile. See? Jiwoo said. Your people and mine might have disagreements. But that doesn't mean we can't find common ground. It just takes one person willing to take the first step. Later that day, the summit achieved something unprecedented. The Kirel and human delegations signed a peace treaty. The first real progress in months. It wasn't because of political pressure or military threats. It was because a child had asked a simple question, and an ambassador had given an honest answer. As Jiwoo left the summit hall, Director Jae-sung approached. He looked older now, more tired, but he was smiling. You did it again. I didn't do anything, Jiwoo protested. I just talked to a kid. You showed them what's possible. You and your pack. He gestured at the cubs. Do you ever regret it? Opening that door? Everything that came after? Jiwoo thought about the question. She'd been threatened, attacked, put on trial, almost killed. She'd given up a quiet research career for a life of constant travel and diplomatic pressure. She'd taken on the responsibility of raising 3 alien children and changing galactic politics. No, she said finally. I don't regret it at all. That night, in her quarters on the station, Jiwoo sat with the cubs and watched the stars. They were bigger now, but they still tried to curl up around her like they had when they were small. Biol's head in her lap, Dal pressed against her side, Hay lying across her feet. Her communicator beeped with messages from different worlds, species requesting her help, asking questions, wanting to learn from her experience. There was so much work to do, so many connections to build, but for now, she was content to sit with her family and remember the sounds that had started everything. The lonely chirping of 3 cubs who just needed someone to care. She'd opened a door that night and walked through it into a future she never could have imagined. "Thank you," she whispered to the cubs in Korean, "for choosing me, for protecting me, for being my pack." 3 pairs of golden eyes looked at her with love and loyalty. 3 voices purred in harmony, a sound that meant home and safety and belonging. Outside, the galaxy turned. Wars threatened, and peace negotiations stalled. Different species struggled to understand each other, but in one small room, a human and 3 Vorath slept peacefully, proving that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't weapons or politics or ancient traditions. It was the simple choice to open a door, to offer kindness to someone who'd never known it, to believe that connection was stronger than isolation, that family could cross any divide, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, that belief spread like light, touching worlds and changing hearts, one gentle act at a time. The human had approached the cubs when everyone warned her not to, and now the cubs protected her, day and night, as she protected the galaxy's future.